Good morning, and welcome back to Invo Insider Podcast, episode number 2. I'm your host, Ryan Heffernon, and with this being episode number 2, that means that all the platforms we were waiting to go live on are now live, so you can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. That is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Anywhere that you listen to a podcast, you can listen to. So,
let's go.
Like I said, I'm Ryan Heffernon. I'm your host, joined by my co-host and limbo extraordinaire, Jake Martin. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm good. I didn't see that one coming, but that's actually how I entered the room. I limboed under the table. But I guess I should say is real talk that everyone knows that I am the worst at limbo.
Yeah,
and I have really not great flexibility, which is why I refuse to enter any limbo contests in the office or out of the office.
Yeah, I learned that this morning. You got to be careful what you say around me, especially whenever we're going to go live on a podcast.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's stuck in the head. But
thank you.
At this time of recording, this is an important thing, the most important thing maybe today. At the time of recording, it is championship week here in Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
So I got my Patrick Mahomes hoodie.
Let's go.
This week. And by the time our listeners hear this, Jake and I will either be very happy or very sad with the Chiefs either losing to Joe Burrow once again or going to a third Super Bowl. So hopefully we're going to be happy. But we have an awesome podcast in store for you today.
Absolutely.
Featuring an amazing one-on-one insider interview with Bryan Gentle of Insider Credit Union. But I want to start off this podcast with a new segment I'm going to call the Invo Monthly. And during the Invo Monthly, our goal is to give our listeners kind of an inside look at what goes on behind the scenes and what we're pushing forward towards. So this month, Jake, I want to just kind of focus in on a concept you've really been driving home to the Invo team, and I think is great for our listeners to hear. That is the concept of good. And our listeners are surely confused at this point, so maybe just take a few minutes and explain what I mean by good.
Yeah, no, I love that, and hopefully this will resonate with some insiders today as you're listening to this or watching this. The idea of good, as simple as it is, it's really a mindset or a mantra, and that's kind of how we're going to embody it within the company at Invo this year in 2023, is having a perspective and a mindset of good. And for me, it actually came out of something that was a book that I read over the last couple of years, a gentleman by the name of Jocko Willink, which actually came up on last month's podcast. Shout out to January episode of The Insider. Come on now. If you were there to hear Harris sit down with Brett Hollenbeck of Tower Community Bank, we talked about Jocko, and one of the things that I've always enjoyed about him is his positivity as a Navy SEAL and as a trainer in the Navy SEAL program. Was an attitude of good in a place where a lot of times not a lot of good happens. So to have a vision or a perspective of good is as simple as no matter what happens, that your response is, well, good.
Yeah.
So you think about something you've been working on, a project that you've been working on for weeks, all of a sudden it literally falls apart, or that project is no longer on the slate. Well, good.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have done a better job. Or maybe I should be focusing on something else. I didn't close the deal.
Yeah.
Good. Maybe that wasn't a customer you were supposed to have. Or maybe you need to go back and rework your value proposition. Like, why did that not come to fruition? Hey, that lunch meeting was canceled on Friday. Good. My doctor told me I didn't need cheese and I didn't need fries anyway.
I was going to say, that's a stress reliever. Anytime a meeting comes off the books, it feels good.
It's a mindset of how do you approach situations, positive or negative. And really we're talking about negative, but there's an opportunity to come out of that situation, the negative situation, the outcome you didn't expect, the arrival at the end game that wasn't what you'd hoped for, with an attitude of good. And it's always about finding that good and kind of flexing that muscle a little bit, of just like an exercise, right? The more you do that, the more it becomes firsthand instead of second nature, and really trying to drive that home within the company. So we're going to be doing some fun things about that.
Yeah. And I know that this is a concept that it's really good for internal sort of team building. It's a good, like I said, it's a positive thing. And like you were saying, I think even whenever you encounter at any point just in your work life a failure, maybe what we can see as a failure, sort of pick yourself up off the mat, sort of moving on from that. It's a very good internal team building, but for banks and credit unions, right? That's our audience. How do you think that sort of concept translates to their everyday work life? How does that translate to helping the the customer and the member that they're serving.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a difficult one, right? Because it's really about ripping the Band-Aid off and analyzing situations where the outcome was definitely negative. So you think about, I had a conversation with a client recently who was in the midst of construction projects, and a branch was about 3 months behind. I was like, well, that's good. You're going to have time to get more advertising out about it. You're going to have time to make sure the polish is on the furniture. You're going to make sure your staff is trained. And they sit there and they're like, yeah, those are actually things we were behind on. I'm like, well, there's a way to look at that differently. Maybe you've had a customer for a long time and they leave you. Good. Doesn't feel good, right? But the good of that is, why did they leave? Analyze that. What's the fallout? What were you not doing to serve that customer? Or where was the shortcoming that was created or arrived that made them leave? Analyze that situation. And aggravated customers are a great place to find resolution, but also to find ways to improve processes. So I'm a firm believer, and you'll hear more about this today in the conversation with Bryan, but getting into the weeds of customer service is going to have a lot of negative outcomes at different times. And if you can have that perspective of good, then you're going to find a way to course correct and make things better tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think that's so valuable, just not even just for banks or credit unions, but just anybody in a professional environment. We're going to encounter some sort of failure in career. We're going to encounter difficult things that we have to deal with, difficult circumstances. But I think it's such a waste if we don't learn from them, we don't take something from them. I think this really embodies that. So, and I also and I know it's championship week, we're talking about the Chiefs some more, but I can't help but think this is just Patrick Mahomes' mantra, because every time he goes down double digits, he seems to get better.
I sprained my ankle. Good.
Yeah, no, exactly. So maybe kind of started with him, but no, that's awesome. Without further delay, obviously we're here to talk to Bryan. That's what so many of you tune in to listen to, and I think it's an awesome conversation. I'm really, really excited has to say. And just to give maybe some background, this month he sits down for this one-on-one conversation with Bryan Gentle. I already mentioned his name, but he's the Chief Information Officer at Infuse Credit Union. So with that, we're going to jump right into this interview.
All right. Welcome to my favorite segment of the podcast. And this is an opportunity where we get to sit down with a subject matter expert. And today we are blessed to have Bryan Gentle, Chief Information Officer from Infuse Credit Union, with us today. Fun fact, I have had the pleasure of knowing Bryan for over 10 years. Those might be 10 years he would like to forget, but I'm not going to let him forget that. Cool thing about Bryan, though, is he's bringing a perspective as an IT professional to this, and that's where his undergrad experience was, his master's degree as well. Taking that experience and education into the financial vertical is something I really want to jump into today, but you want to hear it from him and not from me, so I'm going to hand it over here. Bryan, welcome to the podcast.
Howdy, Jake. How you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I was going to say that when we started off here right away, I've got a very boring background compared to the Bryan Gentle studios that you're coming in from today. It looks incredible. I think you've even got a gaming chair. You're built for speed today.
I do. This is my home office where I like to hang out a lot, both during work and after work, so I like to have it look nice.
It looks incredible. Yeah. Listen, man, I really appreciate you joining us. What I would like to do just to get started is give you an opportunity to tell your story. And what that means from my perspective is let the insiders that are here today know a little bit more about you individually. And I'll let you get as far into the weeds on that as you would like when we kind of dive into some more things industry specific. But share your background, share a little bit about where you've come from, your time in the credit union space, how you arrived there. I really just want to open this up for conversation and let you tell your story to the audience.
Sure. So, like I said, my name's Bryan Gentle. I'm the CIO for Infuse Credit Union. I've been here with Infuse, formerly Mid-Missouri Credit Union, for going on 12 years this March. I've served my entire time has served in some form or fashion in the IT side. I started out as an IT support tech, brought on to kind of redesign the website and be their first dedicated IT person, and since then I've had the privilege to work with several different really awesome people and all sorts of different vendors, and I've grown from being just an IT support tech who really thought this was just a stepping stone to something bigger and better, to realizing that the credit union industry is actually pretty cool. So the things that we get to do to help so many people, we serve over 30,000 members at Infuse, and it's mostly military in central Missouri, low to moderate income. We're just serving, your average everyday American, just good people, good hardworking folks. So we get to do lots of things to help people that a lot of people won't necessarily do, like different types of mortgages and different things where it's just nice to see the difference we can make in people's lives. So what started out as just I'll work here until I can get my job working somewhere cooler, bigger, better. It's turned into a real career that I've come to enjoy quite a bit. And now I've grown it from just me in the department to I think there's a total of 5 now, including our first full-time developer and a phenomenal
Awesome.
VP of IT. So it's been fun. And then recently I also got the privilege to have taken on both the facilities for the credit union, so managing our 7 locations, and more interestingly, the marketing department. So kind of changing up my perspective on things. You get that IT security hat fighting with the marketing hat sometimes, but I get exposed to a whole new side of the credit union that I've dabbled in before, but never been responsible for before. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of directions I'd like to go there. And so we've got 6 hours for this podcast, so we're going to go in every direction. Does that sound about right, Ryan? Looking over here at my production, my producer, making sure we're good on time. So I want to know, the question for me is, you could go so many different directions with that degree, Bryan. So just a real quick moment of real talk, credit union space. Like how did you decide initially, going back in time, that I want to jump into the financial space? The credit union space looks like, and you referenced that as possibly at that time it could have been just a stepping stone. But what was the opportunity that was in front of you that made you decide to go ahead and make that leap?
So when I was working on my undergrad, I worked at the dining facilities on Fort Leonard Wood. If you're familiar with Fort Leonard Wood, it's a military training place for basic training, AIT, and the building I worked in the most was for the brand new troops coming right in, long hair when they come in for breakfast, short hair when they leave, come back for lunch. And so I worked 4 a.m. to noon. And then I did college at night because one of my goals was to graduate with no college debt. So I worked early morning and I did night school. And one of my professors at night school was friends with somebody who was on the board of directors for Mid-Missouri Credit Union, and they came to him and asked him, hey, who do you recommend for an IT person that can come in and do the website? They knew that he taught web design and stuff, so he recommended me, and he actually worked for the military in the DoD side and doing IT for all of Fort Leonard Wood. And that was really the goal for me, is I'll go make what I thought would be a better career working there. And then I just kind of got in, and I got to do, I don't do the same thing every day. I do different projects. We're rolling out video banking. We're rolling out a new website. We're looking at a building. It's just constantly something different and a challenge, and I've come to enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it absolutely has turned into exactly what you just described, which is probably a 3-page long description of your job. But we'll get into that as well. I think back to when you and I first met, and we'll just kind of start to go down that road. But what impressed me was, and I'm going to try to be gentle here, not using your last name as a pun, but when it comes to IT, I usually find most individuals, number one, are way in another stratosphere than I am from a knowledge-based standpoint, but that they're very technical but can't see really outside of that, or they're challenged by seeing outside of that. That's probably a better way to put that. But whenever we met, it was at that date in time about how to even update the branch facilities that you had. You're looking at interactive teller machines at that time. You were looking at a bunch of different tech, which in my opinion was rooted in your vision of customer service. And I think that that's what I've seen to be a huge differentiator from you, is you're bringing this technical IT background, but then having this filter of being in an industry, specifically in a role where you can impact the ability to serve. And you even referenced that a few times there in your opening. Talk to me a little bit about that. Why do you think that you, as an individual, have a passion for servicing the members of Infuse and before that at Mid-Missouri, but just in general in this industry? Like, where does that passion come from?
I think it's just, seeing, I've always looked at, more recently, I've taken more of an interest in it, but looking at the credit union as my business. In the credit union world, if you have a share, you're a member owner. So at some point, I adopted this view of, this is my business. I want to grow my business, and I see our members that come in, and I just, it's rural Missouri. We don't live in big towns, so it's a lot of people that we know that you bump into on the street. Everybody kind of knows Infuse. We're one of the larger credit unions in central Missouri for sure, and I think right now we're at like the 11th largest in the state or something. So we're big enough in our area, but it's still kind of like a small hometown feel to it, where you just see a bunch of people, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I just like to help. I've always kind of had a servant's heart. I'm that guy that wants to stay there late, putting up chairs after church or whatever, and get there early to make sure that stuff's being done, working in the media booth for this, that, and the other. So I've always wanted to help people. And when I could see that the impact that I could have in this role, probably my first big project I did at the credit union was rolling out a new online banking platform. Jack Henry's old product, MCW, was going away. And they're like, hey, Bryan, working on your undergrad guy, what are we going to do for online banking? And I'm like, good Lord, you're going to trust me with that? So I wrote, let's see, I think I had my graduates done by then, or my undergrad, and I was working on my graduates. So I started research, and I just started looking into all these different things, and comparing the different platforms, what Q2 can do better than Jack Henry or Banno, or you name it. There's 100 different platforms out there that all have their pros and cons, and it exposed me we're going from MCW, which had, I'm sure at the time it came out, it was revolutionary, but that was free my time in banking, and seeing what the new platforms could do. And you start to see the technology, and when we roll it out, you're like, wow, we can do this, and this. And at the time, we had our CEO, his name was Johnny O'Hare. He kind of had this vision of, in 2020, what are our members going to want to do? We need to do that now. So, and that was probably back in 2014, 2013. Yeah, that's good. So, kind of looking that route and saying, what can we do to help members? What are they going to expect us to do to help them 5, 6, 7 years in the future? So that gets me to, the excitement of looking into the future, playing with technology, playing with what's the cool things that we can do, but also just that root of the member's first for us. The member always comes first for us. We are only here because they pay for us to be here. I mean, it's just they need our help, and we need them so that we can have a job and a career and and have this fun opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I think the phrase that you threw out there really early on in your answer, which was having a servant's heart, really just checks the box for all of those things. And that's a really good vision just to have in general, regardless of what you're doing. Like you gave several examples, whether it was in your capacity and wearing different hats at the credit union, whether it was serving at church, whether it was being involved in your community. I mean, having a servant's heart is, in my opinion, one of the things that we should all strive to do. And then, of course, you filled that behind that with all your passion for the reasons why, which is great. I know everybody enjoyed hearing that. I know I did. Let's go back to that time period you talked about. You threw out the date of 2014, which aligns to one of the questions I wanted to ask you today. The last 10 years, in my opinion, has dramatically changed in the financial space, really more than the 90 years that preceded it. I mean, we're very much in an industry that has not changed. It hasn't evolved. It hasn't had to, right? I mean, the products and services today are still pretty much the same that they've been the entire time that this industry has been available to serve customers, from from a banking standpoint, i.e. just the definition of banking, but the manner in which we interact with our financial institution and the products and services, whether it's digital banking or core or video banking or whatever, has significantly changed, at least from my opinion, in the last 10 years. What do you think you've seen be the most dramatic in the last 10, though? Get into some of the details of what you thought, man, I can't believe how much this has changed or that's changed, or does anything individual jump out to you from that? I'd kind of like to hear your perspectives from the front line.
Yeah, so to me, I hear my CEO, my EVP, the CEO, they've been in banking for a long time, 20 plus years, and they talk back to the days of when people are saying checks are going to go away or branches are going to go away, and we've seen that hasn't happened. But I think what has been the most impactful is our online banking, really, just digital first, mobile first approach at things. If our members use our branches a lot still, even through COVID, our numbers didn't go down. We have a branch in Lebanon specific. It's a very more blue collar town. They build all like tracker boats and they do a lot of cool stuff there. And members came in and out every day and they do a lot of transactions. But when you look at all those transactions between all branches and you combine them all up, it's doing almost as much transactions as our online banking does per month. So our digital platform really, it's a super important piece to it. Allowing members to bank how they want to bank, even though it's increased risk for the financial sector. We have all these regulations saying how we can provide the services that we provide, and can you charge a fee for that, and what's the cap for this. And by the way, any fraud that happens, it's coming out of your pocket, not anybody else's. So
yeah,
it's the struggle of maintaining the minimum loan rates, the minimum fees, and providing the maximum number of everything else. And really, it's a real slim margins game that we all play. But providing the services where the members want it is, to me, the biggest focus of, do they want digital banking? Great. Let's find out how we can do it securely, or as secure as we can, so that they can be helped. ITMs, when we rolled that out, it was even before COVID, we started the focus on how can we get remote 24/7 if we have to. So when I went out and saw Jack Henry's call center, and I remember being so impressed that every single person had a laptop that they took home every day, so that if the building burnt down, they could keep the call center going the next day.
Sure.
So starting to move towards that approach, and still back to member first of when it snowed yesterday morning and we had to open late. Well, the ITMs were open on time, because why not? We can be ready. We can serve members when they need to be served. Same with the video banking or video chat is what we're kind of calling it. Highlighting that, like, hey, right now, you want to talk to somebody, you want to talk face-to-face, we can do it through there. So just meeting members where they want to be met is kind of the biggest thing, where it's not you're going to come to us, you're going to do banking how we are going to offer it. It's too competitive of an industry for that. We can't just sit around and wait until we're irrelevant and all of our members leave. So, yeah, that's kind of a long answer to your question, but
no, it's a great answer. And I think you reiterated one of the things that I would say I've learned it myself, just kind of being honest here, in the last 2 years, is we have seen a significant shift, and I've started to ask different questions and ask better questions to people we're potentially going to partner with our platform at Invo, and that's, we've got all these great things. At least, selfishly, I think we've got all these great resources, but you know what? Not all of them work for everybody, and that's because you can't deploy the same strategy at every single financial institution in every single market and geography in the United States. I mean, the cities are different than rural. Different pockets are different depending on what the working class is in those areas. And some of those circumstances are very much, hey, you better be listening to what your customer is going to do and what they want, because there's a lot of other options that they can leverage, right? And so to the point that you made, which is listen to what the member is saying, be where they want you to be available, when and how they want you to be, and don't just impose your will, for lack of better words, in the industry, which we've seen a lot do, right? And I'm not going to knock the large, bank and credit union institutions in the United States, because they do a lot of great things for a lot of good people, but there's a lot of imposing will, I think, that happens. And that's a statement actually I got from a recent conversation I had with the president and CEO of a community bank. But he was like, if you impose your will on your customers, guess what? They've got choice and opinion. They'll go somewhere else. So let's dive in a little bit further there. So you think about the markets that you serve across your 7 locations, and then your digital branch. We always refer to your website, your mobile platform as your digital branch. How did you start to identify exactly how your members wanted to engage your institution? Like, what level of digital made sense? What tools or resources made sense? How did the ITMs come to fruition early on? And you guys were one of the very first credit unions to deploy at a scale in the state of Missouri, outside of metropolitan Kansas City or St. Louis, in an area that was at the time a great story to tell and still is today. But what is the process at Infuse, and what process do you follow to listen to the membership base to make sure that you guys are catering to what their needs are?
I think the biggest thing for me to do for that is, one, just talking with people, talking with our members outside of the credit union. Some people, especially depending on the department they work in, they don't necessarily want to go out and be like, hey, I work at the credit union. What do you think? But I get, usually my interactions are more positive with members, so I can, just talk with them outside, see what they think is cool. But I always kind of look at things as a brand new member. If I was looking at the credit union, what do I want? And I'm more technical, so I'd probably put more of a technical approach to things than most members actually want. Like, I thought digital wallets would be the demand for everybody, but numbers across the industry don't necessarily reflect that. It's still a growing thing, but a lot of it's just talking with members. But more than that, I'd say it's talking with the branches. I've always tried to make an effort to develop a friendship or relationship with the branch managers and a couple of the key staff around the company that deal with members in and out every day. And they hear the members, they talk to the members every single day. They get the positive and the negative, and we can kind of see what they are hearing the members want of, oh, did you know Major Bank this does that? Why don't you? And some of it turns out we do. We've never done we've focused on different things for media and advertising that members don't know. One of my shortcomings is I kind of roll out this project that I'm like, oh, sweet, this is great. Members are going to love this. The employees are going to love it. And then I don't do a great job of educating and training and rolling it out all the way. I just kind of set it down and move on. I don't know, it's completely fair, but we haven't always done a great job of educating the members of these awesome services that we provide. So that's one step that I've tried to work on improving, but it's just taking a step back and listening to the people that talk with the members the most, and listening to the members I think has been the most helpful for figuring out where that technology needs to go. And some of that, members weren't asking for ITMs. That was our take a step back, and one, we had a problem to solve. We had a location where we couldn't do a traditional drive up, and we didn't want to do a big tube system and rip out the parking lot. So we did the ITM was kind of our first. Well, that's a feasible option, and when we started looking at it more as just this kind of band-aid to a problem we had, we realized that this solution can serve in a much broader capacity, and especially when you look at doing business continuity and staying open when even in ice and snow.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I think back when you guys started looking at ITMs and exploring strategies and usage, and I actually forgot that was the initial process was because of the island situation. How do we solve for drive up? And that whether that was intentional or, like you said, it was a Band-Aid to the situation, that to this point, in my opinion, from what I've seen nationally, has still continued to be the best strategy, is the drive-up strategy, replacing the pneumatic tubes. I always joke there's no worse experience at my financial institution than having to deal with the pneumatic tube. I feel like I'm still doing the same thing I watched my grandparents do back in the 80s when I would ride to them, go with my grandma to the bank on Friday, right? Was sit at that pneumatic tube and sound like a rocket was taking off. I'm like, we literally still have that same technology out there today. There's a better way to do it. And you were being hard on yourself. So, but I love the fact that you humble yourself, because I think that you guys did a fantastic job of deploying that tech specifically, and then the listening after the fact is the most important thing. And at least that's what I believe. The most important thing is listening to what the members are saying after you've done X, whatever that is, right? If you change the way the lobby is laid out, what do your members think about it, right? If you remove pneumatic tubes or you deploy ITMs, what are the members saying? I think that's the most important thing. So I just want to kind of give you some praise there. You're being pretty hard on yourself, but I think that we're all striving to be better for sure, right? But I think that the listening intentionally after the fact is the most important part of that equation. So let's go back in time to that ITM deployment, and you think about that first step of committing to the tech, deploying the technology, getting buy-in internally as well sometimes is a challenge or an issue. And I mean, even throwing that out there, probably you start to maybe resurface some memories of what that was like to get that buy-in. But what was the response initially, if you can recall this, internally from the team supporting it, and then externally some of the initial things you heard from your members? And then my second part of that question would be, obviously it's positive because you went on into phase 2 and you've pushed on even further than that. But kind of walk us through that initial thought of deploying a very revolutionary technology at that time.
So I think that it starts with the rolling out with proper training and education for the members and coming up with some marketing programs to kind of push the product. We looked at our community, and it's interesting how broad our membership base is. For being in rural Missouri, you might think that, everybody's kind of the same, but we go from a blue-collar town in Lebanon where it's just a bunch of really hard-working folks, and you go to Rolla, and it's more of a healthcare and educational type community with different levels of technical aptitude or more likeliness to adopt, and then a military community in the middle and a retirement community up north. So it's all over the place, really. But we knew that one of the first things we would hear is, I don't want somebody talking to us from India, or I don't want somebody talking to us from somewhere else. Keeping things local in Missouri is important to us. So we did a good job, or we tried to do a good job at highlighting, we're here, the people you're talking to, they're in that building right there, they're on the second floor, and that you'll see them all the time. We did a little bit of a marketing campaign to kind of incent the use at first. We just set a modest budget and said, just come try it. We'll give you $5 just for trying it. And it didn't cost a ton, but it got the word out, and people used it, and they realized this really wasn't that bad. And eventually they're like, this is good. So it takes some time to adopt, just like, I look at you look at any big box store that's deployed self-checkout. At first, most people are like, I'm not doing that. You're not paying me to check myself out, so why would I do it? And do you want to talk to somebody, or you just want to go check yourself out? Like sometimes, you have to be so positive all day, and you just want to go home, and I just want to go get it done and move on. So, the PTMs, we call them PTMs. We started that process. I really wish we would have just called them ITMs from day one, like the rest of the world. But
personal teller machines, is that what you refer to it as?
Yeah, because it had to be special, It couldn't just be interactive.
You're not alone. I think that's the route that most took when they deployed. I mean, we've got all kinds of different terminology. There's a community bank down in the Springfield, Missouri area that calls them Todd. So they're all called Todds, and they're teller on demand. So I think that makes it unique, because that's Infuse's brand, right? That's kind of what the thought process was there. But
I want to keep it personal. So And that's kind of what we built the campaign around is, it's our people. We're here. Something we've always made crystal clear to employees. I think anytime you roll out some new technology where it's like, oh, we're going to be able to service all of our drive-through locations with half the staff. The first fear is, oh, they're just going to lay us off. They're going to fire us. They're going to do something. Yeah. And we've always and our board has always backed us on this, of nobody has ever been laid off because of any new technology that's been rolled out.
Right.
We shift and we try to grow into any extra staff that we might have. So we'll find a special project for people to do, but building that trust with our employees that they know that we're not going to roll out some new automation and cut jobs. We're just going to make it easier to where they can focus on the members that are walking into the branch instead of having to try to handle the people that are standing in front of them as well as the people in the drive-through. So that was one of the fears that people had that we had to alleviate, but it took a while, and now it's kind of like that with every new product we roll out of this isn't replacing anybody, we're just enhancing. So.
Yeah. I think it aligns to one of the things you've shared with me, and I've heard you say it over the years, but before this, I was kind of asking you what are some of the things you were wanting to talk about or think about, and it's that digital first approach to member service, right? And that bleeds into, today it literally bleeds into every single area of the credit union, from the physical in the branch and the technology that's available there, up at the drive-through, off-site, or even online or the branch in your pocket, right, in the mobile device. What is it that continues to help kind of guide the direction for you and your capacity as CIO, and then also at Infuse, of choosing the right digital first strategies? Because that's a lot of times you're not trying to, you are trying to revolutionize, but maybe evolve or just positively impact products or services that already exist. So how do we leverage digital to enhance that and not detract from that? Kind of share your mantra there, your thoughts, if you would.
That one's kind of hard because I'm a nerd. So I'll see some new technology. I'm like, we got to do that. That's cool. You get a nice sales demo and you're like, let's do it tomorrow. It doesn't matter that there's 1,000 projects lined up that if you add another project, that just means you're doing other projects worse, and that project's not going to be rolled out properly either. But I don't really know. It's one of those that I kind of try to take a step back. I usually ask the front line. I've kind of barged my way into a lot of the branch manager type relationships. I've always worked really close with our COO, who's over them. So I'll invite myself to their lunches and just kind of listen, and they'll be like, hey, slow down. Like, stop giving us new technology. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. Some of them are older, and I was like, oh, it's just older folks they don't like. But then half of them or more at the table are my age or younger now. They're like, you got to slow down. So that's part of it. We try not to overwhelm with new stuff. So I try to balance, automation and improving internal processes or overall experience without just this massive new technology changes, along with identifying those technology pieces that I think people will be asking for in the future. But as far as tempering and trying to figure out what those are, I wish I knew how to do that better, honestly, because you go to the conferences and you see the technology, and you could go to pretty much every booth that's at any tech expo and be like, that's cool. Our members, there's a portion of our members that would find that really awesome. But when it comes down to it, we have a finite budget. We don't have this bottomless amount of cash waiting to be spent on cool technology. So it's just trying to find what's going to give the most impact. What's going to be the most desired new feature, or what's going to reduce risk, reduce charge-off, reduce fraud that our members are facing every day.
No, I think that's good. And I would say, I mean, I would affirm and encourage you. You're doing the right things because you need to be evaluating what's out there, right? And that's what's expected of someone in your seat, in my opinion, is that you are going to these events, conventions, and conferences and innovation seminars so that you can see what the latest and the greatest is. But then you're vetting out, hey, what makes the best and most sense for Infuse Credit Union and our members, and you're using those filters that you've always used, right? Which is listening, which we've already talked about, and then being intentional to bring the right tools and resources to enhance those experiences. And, sometimes that means, I don't want to say taking risk, but maybe taking calculated risks, right? I mean, being on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge is what it was about at one point to deploy cash recyclers, which sounds ridiculous. But you think about when it was talking about, automating the teller drawer, and then the cash recycler was revolutionary. Nobody's going to want to work out of that, right? Or see money come out of that. Nobody's going to trust that machine. I mean, that was a stepping stone to the ITMs, which was, in my opinion, the real start of the wave of bringing in revolution to the way that an institution interacts with the membership base. Because then it was able to prove out, hey, we can conduct remote interactions and transactions. And then that parlayed into what I believe was a significant mass adoption out of the result of the pandemic with being forced into that or trying new things, right? So I think I want to just encourage you to do the right things. I think that's what you're supposed to do in your capacity. And someone who has that vision that you have to push is what also keeps this industry moving forward. And I think we both could admit the financial vertical itself typically is a little bit behind what we see in commercial and retail, right? So just a little bit. That's okay because we could also watch their failures and not repeat those things, right? Yeah. No. You talk about your involvement in other areas of the credit union. So I want to spend some time kind of digging in there because that's unique. I don't know a lot of CIOs that have visibility into what's happening in branch. They have visibility of what's happening in marketing and advertising, but they don't necessarily have their hands in that. So what have you been able to see? Let's start with the physical and in the branch, being involved in that area. What have you seen that has changed? What have you seen that's changed even before or after even COVID? But at Infuse specifically, what are you guys doing different in the branch that maybe others are not doing, or that you're doing today to kind of push this service forward that you keep talking about, member service?
It's kind of a lot of things. Training was one of our biggest things.
Okay.
And to me, my perspective on a lot of the business, 5 years ago, I thought I understood the business through and through, and I was ready to take over and run the place. And then I got to join our executive team shortly after with our current CEO, get exposed to really the whole business, seeing the lending side, seeing the collections or the member service, the accounting and finance, the training, HR, the whole perspective. So getting to understand a lot of that and see where there's impact that I never realized, like with member delinquency or charge-off, where a lot of the time it's not members that they're not coming in to take advantage of us. They get taken advantage of by other people, or they just need help. So checks, looking into the physical branch and really into the digital branch, as I try to say anything we can do in branch, in person, I'd like to be able to do online in our digital branch.
Yeah,
but
love that.
Adding in stuff like check scanning at the teller line. So our legacy process, I think a lot of financial institutions are still doing, is you get all your checks at the end of the day, and you scan them all in, you send them off to your item processor, and you hope they work, or you hope you put your holds on correct. So adding in products that scan the checks at the point of presentation to make sure that what's the likelihood that this check is good. If there's accounts that are being hit constantly, it's in a system somewhere. You just have to find the right partner to help you identify those. So trying to take a step back and provide the branches the tools they need to feel confident about what they're doing, And then when they have that, then they feel more confident to serve the members, whether that's through the cash recyclers or through the fraud scanning on the checks or instant issue debit cards. We're very close. We have 2 branches working. The others, we're working through something right now, but instant issue credit cards as well. I think we'll be the first in our area that's gone to that step. But just those are kind of the probably the biggest impact things I would say is, and some of it's even just silly little things like coin machines. Members love coin. And they come in with these massive buckets, and to be able to help them there. So that's one where I was like, oh, this is an expense. Why do we have this? But you see the members coming in and day out. We have all sorts of things that are just kind of expenses are there to serve the member. Coin machine is just another one of those. A certain portion love them, and we've gained some accounts from just by having free coin machines. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but that's what we kind of do in branch to help members and to help our tellers and our staff serve the members better.
Yeah, man, coin machines. That doesn't get much more of a filthy piece of equipment in the branch, does that?
That's constant maintenance issues. But having a good partner there helps. So
yeah, absolutely it does. No, I think that's good. So, all right, well that really, I think is indicative of what you guys are doing at Infuse is that you're plugged in, you're listening, you're looking for ways to, again, everything you've said aligns to what you shared at the very beginning of this conversation, which is that member first approach, right? So being focused on the member and having that servant heart. So let's talk about the other hat that you wear, which is the marketing and advertising, marketing and technology, and combining those things. Such a unique hat to wear in your role. How did that even come to pass? How did that fall underneath your umbrella?
When you look at marketing expense 20 years ago, I think most, my CEO, he was a marketing guy before this. That was his hat at our credit union and his hat at every credit union and bank he's worked for previous. And he always said his top 2 budget items were Yellow Pages and newspapers. Well, I don't think I've spent a dime in Yellow Pages in a long time, and we do some local.
Do those even still exist?
Support local.
Are those even still around, Bryan?
I saw them on some movie the other day, and I was like, "Where'd you get those?" Like, that's a prop. That's not a.
That's a prop.
Yeah, but so that was kind of what he spent his budget on a lot back in the day, and he's had a successful career in marketing. Now you look at where does marketing budget go? It's technology. It's Google Ads. It's Facebook. It's different targeted banking type platforms of trying to provide that member. Like goes back to that member first experience. Jake might not be looking to buy his first car. He might be looking to get an IRA looking towards retirement or something. So it's just different. There's technological providers that help us with that a lot of marketing people they can't bridge that translation of when you're talking to a vendor and you're talking to a wonderful salesperson who can really pitch it perfect and they know their product inside and out but they're probably talking at a higher level than at least in my experience most marketing people could understand. So my CEO took a step back and he said he couldn't keep running the marketing department as a CEO and do what he needed to do as the CEO. It's not just sales. He needs to grow the organization and kind of provide that leadership there. So he's like, he looked at the technology we're using and the technology we're wanting to get into to use, and he thought that I would be a good fit, and I'm always for taking another challenge. There's plenty of times throughout the last 2 years or so that I've had the department that I wish I would have told them no thank you, but it's been a challenge, especially compliance. It's horrible. And just having to find those right words, even though we're not trying to be deceptive in ads, so you have to have all the right disclaimers and disclosures. And I don't know how many conversations I had with our compliance officer where they're like, you have to include this, and I'm like, I don't want to. But
it doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. Yeah.
So that's been kind of the least fun side, but the team I have now is great. I've got 3 or 4 that really I just kind of sit back and look good when they do good stuff. So I try to provide that bridge between the executive vision for the organization, what our CLOs needing to do for loans, or what our finance guys want to do for saving money, and then what or for growing deposits or whatever
Sure.
it is, and that's kind of, I think, where I've provided some value to that, and then understanding the technology side so that I can help them deploy better products and better serve and target our members in a positive way, not just blasting out and giving them the same stuff because that's the easy way. But
Sure.
so that's kind of how it ended up with me. I've enjoyed the challenge. It has been a bit of a challenge because there is that, IT security hat saying that, well, you can't do that, because the marketing guy's like, ooh, what if we use this bit of information and we sent this over, and that's going to, I don't know. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but there's just sometimes those hats fight. But it's good that I can be the one there to tell the marketing hat, no, you can't do that because it's not secure, or you're overwhelming the IT department, or whatever.
Yeah. I think you've also probably been successful in that transition and assuming that responsibility because you had a really good mentor in that. I mean, be able to sit underneath your president and CEO who had that experience and has that expertise. There's no better mentor than someone who you can work with directly, and I think that's probably been helpful for you as well. I'm not going to hold against you the fact you called me old at a point in there. I don't think I didn't catch that when you talked about I'd be more interested in an IRA than a car loan. We'll talk about that after the podcast, but I'm
getting up there too. I used to be the young guy at work. I was the 20-year-old starting out, and now I'm getting up there. So
yeah. I like to say I can still do pretty much anything I used to. It just takes me 3 days longer to recover. So that's usually the truth of the matter. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was identifying the solve for challenges in member service today continues, in my opinion, to be harder than ever. And I think that there's challenges that present way faster than they ever used to. I always joke that I'll never forget. This was probably, and now I am going to sound old, like 14 or 15 years ago when I was walking into Credit Union Bank branches really for the first time as a professional and a new perspective of, all right, so let's talk about how you want to rearrange your teller line, or we're going to change your traditional teller line to a pod style layout, and then we're going to route the way that your members are lining up. And like that was a challenge. That was the biggest challenge back in the day was how do we find more efficiency with staff at the teller line? How are you identifying those things that you need to solve for now in member service, whether that's physical, whether that's digital, identifying tools to put in there? But I feel like problem solving and problem identifying has changed significantly in the last several years. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like over the years we've hit a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and some of it, there's still like a couple branches that we need to finish redoing for adding in cash recyclers and whatnot. So some of that's just taking the lessons we've learned at the branches that we've already done it at and applying those lessons to the other branches as time and budget allows. An example of a problem that we solved last year that we think is pretty unique for our area at least, and pretty exciting, is we opened up a branch in Lebanon. So it's our busiest transaction-wise and loan volume-wise, not loan dollar amount, but they do the most loans, and they're just slammed every day. You'd walk in and there's a line out the door, and it's a huge branch too. So we had this problem of how do we serve these members? We have a small parking lot, but a large building, and we have to work with what we have. And we looked at adding on more parking, adding on another drive-through lane, and the cost was high enough that we said, what other solutions can we find?
Sure.
And so we started looking around town and said, do we rebuild? Do we add on somewhere? Do we put a PTM across town with just a canopy over it? What do we do? We found a lot in a pretty good spot of town. To us, it's a perfect spot. It's right on a stoplight and everything. And, and we built I think it's 600 to 700 square foot building. Very small, large enough for 2 offices, a bathroom, and a tiny break room, basically. we put 2 PTMs in the drive-through and 1 inside just in case members come in, and branded the building as a drive-through and lending center. So we pushed trying to move traffic from one side of town to another. So you look at where our members lived, you looked at where the members worked, and we tried to find a good spot that would help draw traffic off. So we're serving one side of town, but we can also serve another without completely redoing our first building. And that one has turned out to be, so far it's looking really promising. It's worked quite a bit. And we had a different but similar challenge in Rolla a couple years back. So we built a small branch inside of Walmart that's probably about the same square footage. And I went with the same kind of approach of one office, a small teller line. There we actually have a teller line versus Lebanon. We didn't do any teller lines. It's a cashless branch. So it's just in the PTMs themselves. So I can't remember what the actual question was. I think I went off on a tangent there. But
no, the tangent answered the question, though, and that's just being able to solve for those challenges that continue to arise, and using whatever strategies make sense at Infuse to solve for them. And I mean that's exactly what you walked out. I have yet to visit that micro branch in Lebanon, but I really want to get a chance to come and see that, because I've actually heard a few others talk about that. So I don't know if you've even realized that, but I've had a few other financial institutions that are regionally located that have already heard about what you guys are doing there, and that means you're doing something right when you get people coming in. I think so. When you think about, and we're kind of drawing here towards the end, and I can't help but think where the technologies that you have leveraged from the team at Invo over the last year has continued to accentuate strategies that you've already implemented. And I do view those as problem solving and innovating. So what does that next chapter look like as you start to gain traction and adoption there? What were your thought process with adopting some of those tools from Info Solutions and some of the things you're doing there?
Yeah, so it's still focusing on some of the marketing efforts to kind of put it out there better, because our approach to using Invo is different than some of our peers, and I respect tremendously how a few credit unions in Springfield specifically have used Invo and how they do this video banking as their primary lending platform. For us, we have a vision of keeping a person in branch everywhere they go, so there's a lending expert everywhere. But it's looking at how can we supplement with video banking. How can we help those more specialized conversations of mortgage or commercial lending, where you might have somebody that can't get off the job site to come in for a meeting, but maybe we can still have that face-to-face interaction and provide that service from anywhere. And to me, one of the more beneficial is adding in the ability to schedule. Especially everybody's lives seem super busy these days, so to give them the opportunity to say, right here on your schedule, grab me that and let's talk. Not just let's have a phone call, which that's fine if they want to do that as well, but let's, at the very least, we want them to see us and see that we're here to talk with them, and that we're still the same person that they've always talked to right here in hometown Waynesville, Missouri. So, but then we're just looking at probably one of the more unique ways that we've used the solution that I didn't picture early on is for fraud deterrence. So we see fraud just constantly on the rise right now, through external transfers or through fraudulent loan apps, people trying to open up accounts online that aren't who they say they are. We just had one the other day that got brought to my attention where somebody applying for a membership called in and started to do a loan app. When we pulled the credit bureau on them, it triggered one of those automated warnings some people get. So the real person called in and said, "Hi, well, I'm Joe Bob, whatever," and we had both of them on the line at the same time. And we're like, "Let's do a video call." So I'm going to send you a link, or we're going to schedule it for tomorrow morning. Let's talk. Sure enough, the fraudulent person didn't decide to actually face us face to face and do the call. So it's been something we've been able to add in those spots where we're just not sure that there's some red flag, there's something. Let's just talk. So I'm going to send you a link. We're going to just hop on a quick video call, and sure enough, 9 times, every situation I've heard for us, they've decided, it's not worth the risk. I'm not giving you my face. I'm not savvy enough to do a video, like a fake video or something. So it's helped deter some fraud and save somebody that's not even our member, saved him from being defrauded of money and saved us from losing a bunch of cash that never would have been paid for. And so, just always looking for what's that problem that this tool can solve.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I don't think that I have heard an example shared where the tech has been used in that capacity, but I love that. What a great story. And you've got a workflow established for that. So you've seen it happen enough that you're like, hey, this would plug in and solve for that issue and that challenge, which I think is going to just continue to help the institution in the long haul. So speaking of long haul, what's next? What's next for Infuse? What are you guys looking at, if you're comfortable to share, kind of like that pie in the sky? I always say this is the kind of like the blue sky part of this conversation. If Bryan was painting a picture for the next 5 or 10 years of Infuse, what might that look like?
It's a lot of the same. What do the members want, and what tools do we need to serve them better? Right now, the focus for 2023 is a new lending platform and getting end-to-end funding through an LOS that members can get small dollar loans. We do a lot of small dollar loans that most people don't want to touch because it's less than $2,000, less than $1,000.
Sure.
So how can we get those done quicker so it's less overhead, but also serving the members on demand like they kind of expect now? They want to be able to do it while they want to be able to do it, not wait for us to say, okay, go ahead. So that's kind of the big stuff. We're looking at what can we do to quicker serve and better serve members. The LOS is the big one. We're always looking for opportunities to grow the organization. We're hoping for some legislative changes that will allow us to expand further. But whenever the government's involved, it'll take forever. But really the big focus for us are process improvement for now, and looking at the trying to figure out what that next thing is for the members. I wish I had a better answer for 5 years from now, like I felt like I did in 2014 when I was looking at technology then. I feel like we've come such a long ways that and I think we've adopted things a long time ago that a lot of people are looking at adopting now, or they started looking at when COVID hit and they're like, we have to be able to serve people. So a lot of it is, I think, formalizing processes and improving existing processes of especially around fraud. I think that's going to be one of our biggest opportunities to improve over the next couple years, is preventing the fraud before it comes to an issue where the members they've already lost their money. So what tools can we use to identify those now, and not how are we going to try to get our money back afterwards, or how are we going to try to make the member whole afterwards?
Right.
So,
No, that's good. I've got one last question for you. And this is the big one. Are the Chiefs going to win the Super Bowl?
I hope so. Mahomes and Kelsey and them, they can do it, I think, so long as that ankle sprain doesn't get Mahomes too immobile. But I sure hope they do.
I think they'd put a boot on Mahomes and he would still come out on the field if they'd let him.
No, he'll do something when you don't expect it. So long as the defensive line and the defensive team can prevent the other team from scoring too much, we'll be all right.
Yeah, I have to apologize to the insiders who joined us, because you've got two Missouri boys on the line, so we had to talk a little bit of football while we can, since it's our moment to shine. So apologies. Actually, no, I take that back. No apologies. I don't want to apologize for that, for having a good football team. Any more than Brian's going to apologize. What's that?
Let's hope this ages well, because I think this comes out next week after the Burrow and Mahomes face off again. And last few times hasn't gone well, but this time we're going to take Burrow down. It's all right.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Absolutely. Yeah. Bryan, listen, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the insiders with today?
Just keep the eye on what matters. Sometimes it's easy to to look too far into the future or just kind of lose focus. So just keep members first, keep your customers first, and keep on keeping on.
I love that. That's exactly what you're doing. So keep on keeping on, as you said, with what you're doing at Infuse and in your career. And it's fun to see things continue to evolve and to see you continue to evolve in your role. And it's been good to know you all these years. I'm excited about what the next 10 years are going to look like. And with that, Bryan, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing the stories of what's got you to this point, as well as some of the insight strategies that you're continuing to execute today and what the future looks like. I was going to also recommend that for any of the insiders here, go connect with Bryan on LinkedIn. Go follow Infuse Credit Union. They share a lot about what's going on at their institution there. We'll also put links out to many of the things we've discussed and talked about today in the show notes, as well as include in the case study, which will be going up live on invosolutions.com in the near future. So with that, I want to say, Bryan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, same here as well. Great. Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Welcome back. And what an awesome time with Bryan. It's always fun to hear, from fellow Missourians, especially the Chiefs are preparing to play for the Super Bowl or hoping to go to the Super Bowl. So
let's go.
By the time our listeners hear this, I'm hoping we're prepping for Super Bowl number 3 with Pat. That's obviously the goal. With that said, it was just an awesome conversation, and I think it was really great to hear specifically about Bryan's care for the member. And he tossed that phrase at the very beginning of a servant's heart, and it's a phrase that we hear often, just associated in general with people. But I think for financial institutions as a whole, it's so important that that's their mindset as a unit. That they're there to serve the member, they're there to serve the customer, to make their lives easier, make their lives better, provide the services they need, the accessibility that they need. So I love that he kind of went into that. His own mindset as a person was to have a servant's heart, but it's just so important that employees in his role translate that to financial institutions as a whole. So I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that really resonated with me as well, because you think about Bryan in his role as a CIO. That guy wears so many hats, and typically you think of the information technology role being someone who's in the background, not in the forefront, but this guy is representing the side of technology, representing the marketing and advertising of technology, representing interactions and the branch experience with the members as well, which is really encompassing all of those touch points. It's just such a unique perspective, but I think he's got it rooted in the right thing in that servant heart mentality.
Yeah, no, that dude is doing a lot of things. He's wearing a lot of hats. So, yeah, he's killing it. I also really liked what he talked about adoption specifically. So we even talking about that servant's heart and trying to help the members, help his members sort of get acquainted with the new technology. He talked about that incentive program. I think it was $5 to try the new tools. And I think we talk about that even in demos. We kind of talk about, we like Andy's here in Springfield, and even the idea of I'll just give a $5 Andy's gift card, maybe for them to try out a new tool. So I thought that was a really neat thing that they did. I think just from a marketing perspective, because obviously that's kind of where my mindset is, from a marketing perspective and adoption, it's just so important that people not only know that they have new tools to try, they know there's new things that they can use, sort of shiny new things to use, but if for the person that's maybe skittish, maybe scared to try it, giving them an incentive. And listen, it's an easy thing to try. We're going to give you a gift card to Andy's. We're going to give you a gift card to wherever it might be. Just try it. And I think that from our experience, everything that we hear from those sorts of incentives is the first time they use video banking, the first time they use the tools, that fear just goes away, right? When they see what it actually is, they see how easy it is to use. So just giving them those incentives, I think, is a valuable tool.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Bryan shared that too, because I've heard that story told in so many different capacities over the years, and we've got a client out of Oklahoma City who did a contest where every time that you took care of your video banking or your banking needs in video banking, you actually were entered for a $100 Amazon gift card. And I'd not heard Bryan share that story to kind of incentivize the members to maybe take a step out of their comfort zone to do that. But I love that because it's a little thing. I mean, and from a budgetary standpoint, I mean, you could put those right into your marketing and advertising buckets and fund it through that. And you're also going to see significant benefits in the long haul from those efficiency gains that you're wanting to get. But you're also getting that enhanced, in my opinion, a better member experience, because then it's up to the member where they want to engage in the branch or digital, online, or in the pocket. But getting someone to try it the first time sometimes is a difficult step. But yeah, I think he's hit a home run with that strategy.
And you say that it's just about enhancing, right? And it even just takes me that thing I loved so much from our conversation. He said that we're not replacing anybody, but just enhancing. And, whenever people step into that, using it for the very first time, I think part of the thought, especially with any automation, is really, are you taking something away? Are you maybe replacing an employee? Like, what are you actually doing here? And him sort of using that phrase, that not replacing, just enhancing, and driving home that idea that this isn't invasive. This isn't something that's going to dramatically change how you're banking. It's not going to dramatically change the people, the staff you need to talk to, the agents that you love to talk to on a weekly or monthly basis, however long it is. I think driving that point home with that idea that we're not replacing them, we're just enhancing it. We're giving them the customer, the member, just more and more opportunities, more accessibility, places, sort of touch points that they can reach their financial institution. So I loved that from him, and that really just drives home where his heart was. You could see throughout the entire interview, just talking about the member, giving them as many opportunities, as many possibilities for them to engage with the credit union as he could. So it was really just awesome to hear from him on that perspective as well. So honestly, just thinking about this whole interview, everything that Bryan kind of just said, Jake, what's the bottom line?
Yeah, the bottom line for me is just maintaining a keen focus on the member or the customer, depending on if you're in the credit union or the banking space. But having a keen focus on the end user is something that you can never lose sight of, and that can be your true north from a vision perspective. And what that means is identifying what those customers and members want, when they want them, where they want them, how they want them. And when I say them, I mean the tools, the interactions, the technology, the experience. But then having the confidence to get that internal buy-in, as Ryan was talking about, and the external exposure and buy-in from people trying it for the first time. But then having confidence to go all in and have everyone rally around it, but not lose sight of why you're doing it. And then at the end, get that pull through, which is the asking the questions. What did the member actually, how was the experience that the member had? What are they saying about it? Are they willing to tell others about it? Are they willing to use it again? What do they not like about it? Which is typically going to be the best response you can get is, that's great, it worked, but what did you not like? Because then that gives you something you can help move the needle with. So I think the bottom line for me is that keen member focus, and then having each one of those segments is a part of that process, from implementation to execution to then pull through and adoption, and then analyzing the outcomes of it.
Yeah, and I think even he talked a little bit about all the sort of projects that maybe go on within a financial institution. We don't have an unlimited budget. We want to pick specific things, find specific tools that are working best for our customers or for our members. So yeah, just driving home sort of that bottom line. Keeping that servant's heart mindset as a financial institution, that we're not just deploying technologies to do it. Just to maybe think that we're better than other credit unions or better than other banks, sort of the shiny new tools. We're doing it to help the customer, to help the member, to provide for them, to sort of find those pain points and be able to answer those pain points. So no, I agree that it's such an important bottom line. It's such an important thing that I think Bryan really drove home. So with that said, I think that's all the time that we have. Jake, do you have anything else you want to add before we go?
I don't think so. Go hop on the website, infosolutions.com, to the Invo Insider area. We got a lot of information there about what's going on. Yeah. If you missed past episodes, go check it out there. Also, you can sign up for the next month and get a part of that Insider program, which we've got some exciting things coming on that.
Yeah.
I think that's it, though, for me. This is Jake.
Yeah, this is Ryan. And make sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. It's at the very beginning of this. And like Jake said, sign up for the next Insider event. So if you want to do that, just go to infosolutions.com/insider. You can sign up for the next one, which is on March 8th, or you can go watch the previous one as well that took place in February. So without further ado, viva la Invo. Until next time.
Viva la Invo.